Hello everyone, myself Dr. Laxmidhar Behera from Regional Institute of Education, National Council of Educational Research and Training, Bhubaneswar, along with National Resource Center for Education, Central University of South Bihar. Welcome you in the course Latest Trends in Pedagogy and Assessment. I hope you will enjoy and learn different perspectives during the course. Students in our classroom today are more diverse than ever. They represent a different cultures and socioeconomic backgrounds, and they speak many different languages. As educators, we are committed to ensure that all children can learn and achieve to the best of their ability. Often, misunderstandings about the role of culture in the behavior, communication, and learning lead to assumptions about the abilities of children to be successful in school. And awareness and understanding of the role of culture in the classroom and the different values and behaviors that accompany culture can remove unintentional barriers to a child's success. Today's classrooms require teachers to educate students varying in culture, language, abilities, and many other characteristics. So, culture specific and multicultural pedagogy are need of the hour. Therefore, I would like to share my ideas on this concern in two sessions. In session 1, we shall discuss a conceptual base about culture-specific pedagogy, components, dimensions, and strategies of culture-specific pedagogy. Whereas the second session focuses the concept, dimensions, strategies of multicultural pedagogy and teacher education program for multicultural pedagogy. Let us start with the session 1. All of us make sense of the world through our different cultural experiences. Culture shapes how we communicate, what we do in our work and play, how we interact with one another, what customs we follow, and how we view the world. The ways in which we learn cannot be separated from these cultural contexts. We all bring a set of cultural understandings, perspectives, and expectations to schools with us. Have you ever asked yourself why you are the way you are? Why you act the way you act? Why you believe in what you believe? Why you speak the language you speak? Why you eat what you eat? The answer is culture, a critical factor in everything we do, say, believe, and we are. We know that culture consists of the values, traditions, social and political relationships, and the worldview created, shared, and transferred by a group of people bound together by common history, geography, location, language, social class, and or religion. It includes not only tangibles such as foods, dress, and artistic expression, but also less tangible manifestations such as communication styles, attitudes, values, and family relationships. These features of culture are often more difficult to pinpoint, but doing so is necessary if you want to understand how student learning may be influenced. Culture provides the template for all human activities, interactions, and understanding. Culture influences how teachers and students think, believe, and behave. Therefore, it is imperative for educators to understand culture's role in the design, implementation, as well as its effect on curriculum and instruction for students and for themselves. Our schools and educational institutions themselves have a culture, a set of norms and ways of working, thinking, talking, valuing, and behaving. When the culture of the school reflects the culture of home or community, the classroom is more familiar to children. If the school doesn't incorporate aspects of students' home and community life in the learning processes, students may feel alienated by the classroom environment. In addition, if teachers don't understand the cultural norms that guide their students' thinking and behavior, they may misinterpret or miss entirely what students understand. Let us understand the meaning of culture-specific pedagogy. You know, in educational system, pedagogy is concerned with methods, approaches, or processes of teaching learning. Acquiring new knowledge requires a connection between the child's prior cultural knowledge and the new knowledge being taught and learned. Teachers have a responsibility to all their students to ensure that all have an equal opportunity to achieve to the best of their ability. If pedagogy reflects the cultural and linguistic practices and values of only one group of students, then the other group of students are denied an equal opportunity to learn. Pedagogy that is culturally responsive addresses the needs of all learners. Culture-specific pedagogy is responsive to the culture of the learners in the development, transaction of curriculum and teaching learning processes. Culturally competent teachers facilitate learning. They understand how to change and adapt instructions in the different cultural context. These teachers create optimal learning conditions which enable more children to learn what they intend to teach. Culture-specific pedagogy addresses the cultural context of the learners and teachers. Other terms used to address this type of pedagogy include culturally responsive pedagogy, culturally respective pedagogy, culture-sensitive pedagogy, culturally rooted and culturally relevant pedagogy. Though the terms may differ, the common spirit is the same, that is, respect for cultural differences. To understand culture-specific pedagogy, let us discuss two important aspects. These are teachers' pedagogical behavior and students' cultural displays. Teachers' pedagogical behavior are actions and attitudes that teachers express in classroom related to the act of teaching. When demonstrated in the classrooms, one can observe that how they choose to interact with students, including the quality of their interpersonal relationships with specific children, the ways they arrange their room physically, how they establish the emotional tone of the classroom, and what they expect academically and socially from their students. What perspectives and teaching strategies they choose, the amount of time they spend on various content areas, ways they follow to evaluate instructional materials to reach diverse learners, and how they approach self and conduct student assessment. When we are talking about student cultural displays, these are observable manifestations of the norms, values the children learn in their homes and communities. These behaviors provide valuable insights to who they are, how they act, and what they know. Children bring culturally mediated, historically developing cultural knowledge, practices, values, and skills to the school. Cultural displays emerge during social interactions, daily rituals, and learning situations and are consequential to their development, achievement, and emotional well-being. Children may choose to reveal or conceal or can feel encouraged to display, or compelled to suppress culturally influenced behaviors, skills, attitudes, and knowledge. It benefits children psychologically to express their cultural knowledge, strength, and skills. Culture specific pedagogy facilitates and supports the achievement of all students. The classroom practices are culturally responsive when culture specific pedagogy is implemented. In a culturally responsive classroom, effective teaching and learning occurs in a culturally supported, learner centered context, whereby the strengths of students bring to the schools are identified, nurtured, and utilized to promote student achievement. So, there are mainly three major dimensions of culture specific pedagogy. These are institutional, personal, and transactional dimensions of culture specific pedagogy. Let us discuss about them. Although from a narrow perspective, we believe that pedagogy covers only classroom perspectives. In a broader perspective, culture specific pedagogy comprises these three dimensions: institutional, personal, and transactional. The institutional dimension reflects the administration and its policies and values. The personal dimensions refers to the cognitive and emotional processes teachers must engage to become culturally responsive. The transactional dimensions include materials, strategies, and activities that form the basis of transaction. All three dimensions significantly interact in the teaching and learning process and critical to understanding the effectiveness of culturally responsive pedagogy. What must be done by educational system? The educational system in the institution that provides the physical and political structure for schools to make the institution more culturally responsive, reforms must occur at least three specific areas. Firstly, in organization of the school, which includes the administrative structure and the way it relates to diversity and the use of physical space in planning schools and arranging classroom activities. Secondly, through school policies and procedures, it refers to those policies and practices that impact on the delivery of services to students from diverse backgrounds. Thirdly, by community involvement. This is concerned with the institutional approach to community involvement in which families and communities are expected to find ways to become involved in the school rather than the school seeking connections with the families and communities. As teachers, we are continuously reflecting on our own practices. Teachers' self-reflection is an important part of the personal dimension. By honestly examining our attitudes and beliefs about ourselves and others, we begin to discover why we are who we are, and we can confront biases that have influenced students' value system. Because teachers' values impact relationship with students and their families. Teachers must reconcile negative feelings towards any cultural, linguistic, or ethnic group. Often, teachers are resistant to the notion that their values might reflect prejudices or even racism towards certain groups. Another important aspect of the personal dimension is exploration. It is crucial that teachers explore their personal histories and experiences as well as history, current experiences of their students and students' families. When teachers are unbiased in their instruction and knowledgeable about themselves and their students, they can better respond to the needs of all students. Let us discuss the components of culture specific pedagogy. The sociologist Thomas in the year 1997, while describing a framework towards developing a culture sensitive pedagogy, identifies four pedagogic components like epistemology, process, context, and personal dimensions. These are so structured and integrated with one another that they actively reflect and clearly prescribe culture specific knowledge, behaviors, attitudes, and skills. The two main stages to reach such pedagogy are seen as cultural analysis and cultural selectivity. So, firstly, the epistemological component covers universal knowledge, subject knowledge, knowledge framework, and approaches to knowledge and knowledge of cultures. This component refers to knowledge base which all teachers need. The second component, as we discussed, the process component, includes general activities engaged in. The third one is contextual component. It refers to the socio-cultural matrix in which language, religion, and cultural tradition give a unique profile to practices and development of pedagogy in any culture. The last is personalistic component, which refers to a teacher's self-growth. It highlights the role that human behaviors play in pedagogy and without which pedagogy would merely be a conceptual discourse. The six main influencing factors can affect in different ways to one or all of the four components. The political factor, often coupled with the economic, has the most powerful effect on the development or even the existence of a particular pedagogy. Economic determinants become paramount when pedagogy is perceived to be over teacher resourced. Societal factors relate to changing social realities. Professionalism and the need of the research and innovation are two further factors that can ensure the future quality of pedagogy and especially affect the epistemological and personalistic component. The final factor, cultural factor, plays an important role, but that in many developing nations, cultural heritage has suffered. Secondly, when we talk about the process component, it includes instructional styles, selection, prioritization, decision making, managing, evaluation, and reflection. Thirdly, the contextual component includes language and communication, thinking patterns and styles, values and attitudes, religion, cultural traditions, customs, living patterns, forms of representations, degree of modernization, authority and justice patterns. Fourthly, the personalistic component covers self-growth and development, self-esteem, career motivation, professional commitment, beliefs in the lifelong teacher education, and context sensitivity. Let us discuss about the preconditions for culture-specific pedagogies. In the context of culture-specific pedagogy, 5 qualities distinguish effective teachers. So the qualities are: these teachers hold high expectations for all students and help all students learn as measured by value added or other test based growth measures or by alternative measures. They contribute to positive academic, attitudinal and social outcomes for students such as regular attendance, on-time promotion to the next grade, on-time graduation, self-efficacy and cooperative behavior. They use diverse resources to plan and structure for providing learning opportunities, monitor students' progress formatively, adapt instructions as needed, and evaluate learning using multiple sources of evidences. They contribute to the development of classrooms and schools that value diversity and civic mindedness. They collaborate with colleagues, administrators, parents, and education professionals to ensure student success, particularly the success of high risk students or those with special needs. The prerequisite for culture specific pedagogy are recognition and support of students' culture, believe that all students will succeed, appreciation of cultures represented in the schools or educational institutions, variety of teaching methods, providing genuine emotional and personal presence of teachers, in-depth knowledge about students and their culture, high esteem for self and regard for others. Teachers who use culturally responsive teaching practices, regardless of the content they are teaching, consistently demonstrate that they value students' cultural and linguistic resources and view this knowledge as capital to build on rather than as a barrier to learning. They build on their students' personal experiences and interest as the basis for instructional connections that facilitate student learning and development. They apply interactive, collaborative teaching methods, strategies and ways of interacting that support their students' cultural, linguistic and racial experiences. They integrate the interactive, collaborative best practices. Similarly, the teachers must be intentional about eliminating bias and creating a culturally responsive classroom climate. Each of us has biases that influence how we talk and relate to students and colleagues. We acknowledge our own biases and inequitable actions when we participate in professional development on equity issues. We treat others with respect regardless of their race, nation, origin, sex or disability. We improve their communication skills by listening and adjusting to the communication style of others, continually checking for understanding, respecting differences and using languages that builds trust and positive relationships. We remember that differences in communication style can lead to misunderstandings. We pay attention to how others respond to what they do and say. Ask if there are times when others may view their behavior as disrespectful or harassing. We make an effort to learn about our students' cultural background when we plan our classroom activities that help students learn more about their cultural backgrounds. Similarly, it happens when we include activities such as family history projects, selecting readings about cultures of students in their classroom. Similarly, we ask families or community members for information about the cultural background of the students. We plan family visits or cultural events that encourage discussion and learning about others in their schools. We as teachers examine curriculum and learning materials for bias when we ask some questions like, does the curriculum provide for a balanced study of world cultures? Does the curriculum teach students about the contributions of men and women from different cultural backgrounds? Do classroom learning activities promote appreciation for diversities of culture? Does the curriculum include information about the past and present experiences of people from different cultural backgrounds, of both particularly men and women? Are issues and perspectives of minority groups included? Do textbooks and course materials avoid sexual, racial, and cultural stereotypes? Are opportunities to explore the perspectives of individuals from different backgrounds included? If the curriculum contains biased information or stereotypes, is this pointed out and are students provided with information that is more accurate? Do classroom display and instructional materials include positive representation of diverse international and domestic culture? Teachers build caring, cooperative classroom environments when they plan, like immediately confronting their biases or discriminatory behavior in the classroom or school. When they create a safe, comfortable classroom environment in which students feel comfortable talking about harassment. When we teach students how to treat each other with respect, Teachers build relationship with families and communities when they create a representative team of school administrators, teachers, school counselors, parents, and students to guide the implementation of approaches to prevent harassment. When they build partnership with community members, youth organizers, and other service providers. When they invite local community groups to make representations and conduct workshops for teachers and students. When they create and distribute a directory of diverse local consultants throughout the state and district. When they develop strong linkages with families and community members, for example, producing handbook and guidebook for parents may help reduce concern for their children and build support to your school's harassment prevention program. Teachers identify curricular bias by looking for the practices. Some of the examples are invisibility. It is the oldest form of bias in our instructional materials. Here we overlook certain groups and we give emphasis on a particular group. The other one is stereotyping. It is the most familiar form of bias. It assigns a rigid set of characteristics to all members of a group at the cost of individual attributes and differences. While stereotypes can be positive, they are more often negative, limiting the opportunities based upon rigid perceptions of their ability or potential. Another one issue is imbalance or selectivity. So here we provide one viewpoint or selective information that leads to misinterpretation or an incomplete understanding of an event, situation, or a group of people. Another issue is with regard to fragmentation or isolation. So here we place information about people of color, women, or other protected groups in a box or chapter that is separate from the main body of the text. The most important bias is linguistic bias, where we believe that language can be a powerful conveyor of bias in both blatant and subtle forms. Linguistic bias can affect race, ethnicity, gender, accents, age, ability and disability, and sexual orientation. So let us have a discussion about the specific activities for culture-specific pedagogy. Friends, for implementation of culture-specific pedagogy, some of the activities are to be taken care of. Firstly, we have to acknowledge students' differences as well as their commonalities. While it is important for teachers to note the shared values and practices of their students, it is equally unavoidable that teachers recognize the individual differences of students. Certainly, culture and language may contribute to behaviors and attitudes exhibited by students. For example, some cultures forbid children to engage in direct eye contact with adults. Thus, when the children refuse to look at the teacher, they are not being defiant but practicing their culture. It is important to validate students' cultural identity in classroom practices and instructional materials. Teachers should, to the extent possible, use textbooks, design bulletin boards, and implement classroom activities which is culturally supportive to their students. When the school assign textbooks and other instructional materials, perpetuate stereotypes or fail to adequately represent diverse groups, teachers must supplement instruction with resources rich in diversity and sensitive in portrayal of individuals from different backgrounds. By utilizing images and practices familiar to students, teachers can capitalize on the strengths of students those are brought to the school. Thirdly, students need to be educated about the diversity of the world around them. As the village in which students live becomes more global, they are challenged to interact with people from various backgrounds. When students are ignorant about differences of other groups, there is a greater possibility of conflicts, particularly in the classroom, where students need the skills to relate to each other positively regardless of cultural and linguistic differences. Teachers need to provide students with learning opportunities so that they might become more culturally knowledgeable and competent when encountering others who are different. The other curricular activities of the school like NCC, NSS, Boy Scout and Girl Scout may play a significant role in this regard. Fourthly, culture-specific pedagogy promotes equity and mutual respect among students. In a classroom of diverse cultures, language and abilities, it is imperative that all students feel fairly treated and respected. When students are subjected to unfair discrimination because of their differences, the result can be feeling of unworthiness, frustration or anger, often resulting in low achievement. Teachers need to establish and maintain standards of behavior that require respectful treatment of all in the classroom. Fifthly, it is essential to foster a positive interrelationship among students, their families, the community and the school. When students come to school, they bring knowledge shaped by their families and community. They return home with new knowledge fostered by the school and its practitioners. Students' performance in school will likely to be affected by the ability of the teacher to negotiate this home, community, school relationship effectively. Friends, another point is motivating students to become active participants in their learning. Teachers must encourage students to become active learners who regulate their own learning through reflection and evaluation. Students who are actively engaged in their learning ask questions rather than accept information uncritically. Seventhly, teachers need to encourage students to think critically. A major goal of teaching is to help students become independent thinkers so that they might learn make responsible decisions. Critical thinking requires students to analyze, that is examining the constituent part or elements, and synthesize, that is collection and summarizing the information, and to view situations from a multiple perspectives. Lastly, teachers need to assess students in becoming socially and politically conscious. Teachers must prepare students to participate meaningfully and responsibly not only in the classroom but also in the society. Meaningful and responsible participation requires everyone to critically examine societal policies and practices and to work to correct injustice that exist. So now we will be discussing about approaches of culture-specific pedagogy. For promoting culture-specific pedagogy, problem solving and constructivist approaches are to be used. Let us discuss some of the approaches useful as culture-specific pedagogies. Problem solving approach. Problem solving approach requires teachers to create opportunities for students to investigate in open-minded problems, formulate questions and develop solutions to genuine and challenging situations. Engaging students in solving meaningful problems allows for complex and higher order thinking while increasing students' motivation to learn and resolve authentic issues in their day-to-day problems. Teachers create opportunities for students to analyze, challenge and transform examples of injustice or inequity in their daily lives and communities. Therefore, problem solving becomes culturally responsive when students address problems that touch upon cultural and linguistic issues for improving their daily lives. Some examples may include gathering and analyzing additional sources to supplement textbook curriculum, to better reflect students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds, investigating colleges with supportive programs for diverse students, and collecting oral histories from community leaders, elders regarding topics of the study. The second one is child-centered instruction. Here students' contributions drive the teaching and learning process in a culturally responsive classroom as teachers develop culturally responsive learning opportunities and outcomes focused on student-generated ideas, background, knowledge, values, communication styles and preferences. Through student-oriented practices, teachers respond to students' cultural and linguistic backgrounds and learning needs. Student-centered instruction, choice and participation are central to culturally responsive pedagogy. In culturally responsive classrooms, teachers provide opportunities for choice in classroom activities, encourage child-directed learning and assist students as they engage in these activities. The next one is related to assessment practices. While assessing diverse students, teachers should select informal measures and assessment procedures. Those are formal assessments that consider students' linguistic and cultural identities. Selected assessment tools and procedures should be designed for the purpose of uncovering what students already know and understand in order to relate teachers and families to capitalize on students' strengths. While interpreting assessment results, teachers must recognize that norms regarding expected students' performance may vary depending on students' cultural backgrounds and experiences. Material also plays an important role in culture-specific pedagogy. It requires teachers to integrate research-developed and evidence-based teacher-selected material that validate and consider students' cultural, linguistic and racial identities. The materials need to be contextualized, culture-specific and related to language and lived experiences of the students they support. Let us discuss the implications of culture specific pedagogy. We teachers have a responsibility to ensure that all students have an equal opportunity to achieve to the best of their ability. Providing an equitable educational experience for all children means recognizing and optimizing the learning styles of each child, adapting teaching learning strategies to meet differing learning needs, and maximizing the strength that each student brings to the classroom because of the differences in the student's socio-economic circumstances, gender, language, culture and race. If instruction reflects the cultural and linguistic practices and values of only one group of students, then the other students are denied an equal opportunity to learn. Instruction that is culturally responsive addresses the needs of all learners. Therefore, teachers must be culturally responsive, utilizing materials and examples, engaging in practices, and demonstrating values that includes all rather than excluding students from different backgrounds. By so doing, teachers fulfill their responsibility to all the students. Thank you for listening me. We shall meet in the second session of our discussion that is on multicultural pedagogy. Thank you all.